The child was discovered on a morning when the valley still smelled of smoke and cold earth. Micah, the herbalist, had gone out before sunrise to gather sage and sweetroot, following the quiet paths she had walked for decades. Near the river bend, she noticed the silence first. No birds, no insects, only the soft hiss of wind through burned grass. Then she saw the ruins of the camp. Charred lodge poles lay scattered like broken bones, and the ashes were still dark, as if grief itself had weight. She knelt, touching the ground, reading the story written in fire and blood. Raiders had come fast, taken horses, killed without mercy, and vanished into the plains. As Micah turned to leave, a faint sound stopped her. Not a cry, but a breath. Controlled, cautious. She followed it to a collapsed hide near the edge of the camp. Beneath it, a small boy crouched in the dirt, eyes wide and shining, his face streaked with ash. He held a stone in his fist as if it were a weapon. He did not scream when she lifted the hide. He only watched her, measuring her the way wounded animals do and deciding whether to flee or surrender. She spoke gently, first in the common tongue, then in broken Apache words she remembered from old trading days. The boy answered with a whisper, his voice rough with thirst. He did not know where his parents were, only that they had pushed him down and told him not to move no matter what he heard. Micah understood then that everyone who had loved him was gone. She wrapped him in her cloak and carried him back to her hut in the hills. She fed him warm broth made from marrow and wild onion, and cleaned the cuts on his hands with crushed leaves. That night he slept fitfully, clutching her wrist as if afraid the world would vanish again if he let go. Micah watched him by firelight, noticing the strong line of his jaw even at such a young age, the alertness in his breathing. This was no ordinary child. She named him Taza, meaning the one who survives. Over the following days, he followed her everywhere, silent but attentive. He learned quickly, watching how she crushed roots, how she listened to the land before taking from it. Sometimes he spoke in his sleep, words filled with drums, running feet, and voices calling his name. Micah knew she had stepped into something larger than herself. The land had entrusted her with a living ember from a fallen fire, and she would guard it for as long as fate allowed. 3 years passed like a slow-changing season, each one leaving its mark on the boy. Micah had named Taza, the fragile child. She had carried, from the ashes grew into a lean, sharp-eyed boy who moved through the hills as if the land itself guided his feet. He learned the language of plants before he learned the patience of childhood, distinguishing healing leaves from poison by scent alone. Micah taught him that every root had a spirit and every remedy required respect, not force. He listened, remembered, and never wasted what the earth offered. Yet no matter how peaceful their days seemed, something restless lived beneath Taza's calm surface. At times he would pause mid-task, head tilted, as though listening to a sound only he could hear. When distant riders passed far across the plains, his body tensed without conscious thought. Micah noticed these moments and felt both pride and fear. She knew blood carried memories deeper than words, and his Apache spirit had not faded despite the quiet life she had given him. At night, stories became their bridge between worlds. Micah spoke of old healers, of balance and restraint, while Taza asked questions about warriors, battles, and honor. He remembered fragments, hands lifting him onto a horse, a woman singing to him in a low, steady voice, the smell of leather and smoke. These memories returned in dreams, leaving him awake before dawn, staring at the ceiling as if searching for faces lost to time. The signs began subtly. Tracks near the creek that Micah did not recognize, pressed deep by many hooves. Smoke rising on the horizon where no camp had been the day before. One evening, Taza found an arrow planted upright near their dwelling, its feathers bound in a pattern he somehow knew. When he touched it, a strange certainty settled in his chest. This was not a threat. It was a message. Micah could no longer hide the truth. She told him of his people, of the Apache warriors who valued strength, loyalty, and courage above all else. She told him his parents had died protecting him, ensuring he would live even if they did not. Taza did not cry. He sat very still, absorbing the weight of her words. For the first time, he understood why his heart had always leaned toward the horizon. That night, Micah prepared medicines not for wounds, but for parting. She knew the land would soon return what had been taken from it. Taza belonged to something larger than their quiet life, and though it pained her, she would not chain him to safety. She had raised him to survive. Now fate was coming to claim him. The morning the warriors arrived, the earth seemed to sense them before Micah or the boy did. The birds fled the trees, and a low vibration rolled through the ground like distant thunder. Taza stood outside the hut, eyes fixed on the valley as dust rose in long, moving lines. When the first riders appeared, then dozens more, his chest tightened, not with fear but recognition. By the time the full force emerged, 400. Apache warriors spread wide across the plain. The sun had just crested the hills, lighting spearheads, rifles, and painted shields in gold. Micah stepped forward instinctively, placing herself between Taza and the riders. She held no weapon, only a pouch of herbs at her waist, but her stance was firm. The lead warrior rode ahead, tall and broad-shouldered, his hair braided with bone and bead. He raised a hand, and the others halted as one, a discipline that spoke of long training and deep loyalty. When he dismounted, his gaze did not linger on Micah, but on the boy behind her, studying him with an intensity that felt almost painful. He spoke the boy's birth name aloud, a name Micah had never known, but Taza felt settle into him like a missing piece. At that sound, murmurs moved through the ranks. This child was no ordinary survivor. He was the last living blood of a powerful clan, hidden during a massacre meant to erase that line forever. The warriors had searched for years, following rumors, signs, and the guidance of elders and dreams, until the land finally led them here. Micah felt her breath catch as understanding passed between them. The leader bowed his head to her, a gesture of respect that stunned her more than any threat could have. He thanked her for preserving the boy's life and spirit, for not breaking him or shaping him into something small. At his signal, the warriors struck their shields with their weapons, a rolling sound of honor that echoed against the hills. Taza turned to Micah, torn between the only home he remembered and the destiny calling him forward. She touched his face, pressing dried sage into his palm. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady as she told him he was strong enough to walk both paths now, even if one led away from her. He embraced her once, fiercely, then stepped toward the waiting horse. As he rode into the mass of warriors, the boy did not disappear. He transformed, and Micah, standing alone once more, knew the land had not taken from her. It had trusted her with a future, and she had returned it whole,